Okay, so let's continue. Maybe my daughters will call me again, so I'll need to do a third part. Anyway, there was some kind of promise with Hasidic Judaism, but I don't want to buy into it. I'll just say that the issue of imitation is important, like famously in Islam, with the Sirah, that is like the law that is based, almost exclusively on stories about how Muhammad acted, and in Christianity it's more explicit that you need to imitate God. Of course, not to be like God, which is vanity, but to find ways to understand what's the divine behavior. And part of it, an important part of it, is not to understand reality as random events, but to see connections, to seek the generalizations, and to seek, understanding of root causes. And sometimes this is actually trivial to humans, but sometimes it's in stark conflict to how they like to think, especially in our time, where people are many times they're afraid of generalizations. So they don't, and this forbids them from seeing reality that is just in front of their eyes. But the divine view is to understand that people act the way they act, mostly not because of psychological reasons. Like, this is also a problem in our time, not only the fear of generalizations, but the prominence of psychology. And of course, I spoke about it in this blog many times, and I'm not the first one. It is known that more than 100 years the problem is known. That to explain too much using psychology and instead of sociology and politics, which is another problem, because mostly, the power of psychology to explain human behavior is tremendously, on average, weaker than the power of sociology and politics, and also religion in the broad sense, I would say, like tradition and religion in the broad sense. So no, people do not act because in a random way, or they act because they are part of culture that allows them and even dictates them such acts. And this is a prominent topic in my early writings, I would say. Now, something that I speak about a lot, all doing this kind of blogging for several years, and I need to restate it, to say it again, because it's so important, even though I've said it many, many times, but it's incredibly important. Large noise, huge part of the noise that surrounds me, from the point of view of intelligence services, and still like that, is always constantly trying to figure out whether I am myself or a clone, or whether I am myself or a restarted robot, or all sort of other kind of mythologies that are all aimed to say that I am not really me but something else, either physically else or mentally else. And it was clear to me just from the beginning that this is a plot by the Israeli intelligence that is accepted in silence by other intelligence services because they also hate God and they like to be Nazis. That this is a plot. Always, the people that created clones of myself and imitations and videos without me were always part of the Israeli intelligence, always. And they did it because that's the way, to paint people in a bad way. And once this was evident, which was many years ago, they had the tremendous idea of let's spin this problem. So now let's always say let's admit that yes, sometimes this person has clones, but now so we need to check whether this guy is a clone or not. And the test never ends. It's every morning, every day, every afternoon. Always you need to be tested whether you are yourself or not. And as I've said many times, there are no parameters for that. And the sole purpose of this test is first, to terrorize me, because it's always violent and humiliating, and also to dissuade the public, the other intelligence services, from asking the real questions, which is mostly, why do you accept the fact that you act like Nazis? Why are you Nazis? Which is the most important question that is kind of left aside, because there is always the other question, which is this guy real or a clone? Because presumably if he's real, maybe we should actually ask the question of is it okay to be Nazis? But if he's a clone, then by default presumably it's okay to be Nazis. So we need to test if he's really a clone, and only after it it will be definitely proven that he's not a clone, which will never happen, because even if it's like his given moment he's not a clone, maybe the next moment he will be a clone. So we need to constantly check it. But if in some kind of like, mythological Harit Hayamim, like, like, after Judgment Day, like, the end of days, kind of a mythological end of days will arrive where there will not be like the incentive to test whether this guy is a clone or not. And again, this cannot materialize in this world because any test is only followed with another test. But in kind of like, end of days scenario where, no more tests will be needed in order to see if this person is clone or not, then we might face the question of, is it okay to be Nazis? But not a minute before that. Not a minute before that. So this was a plot that was engineered by the Israelis, but were accepted in silence by everybody else because it allows them to not speak about Nazism and its implication on humanity, and instead speak about whether this guy is a clone or not, forever and ever. Forever and ever. And this shit is still going on, even right now. Like, all the time. Is this a clone or not? Is this a clone? And it's extremely easy to say if it's a clone or not. The test was already, it's already in the Old Testament. It's already in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. It's very, very simple to know whether it's like, Navi Emet or Navi Sheker. Very simple. If the person says, I like the government, they are great, let's cooperate with them, then he is a clone. And if he says this government is Nazi government, I will never cooperate with them, they are all doomed to destruction, then he is not a clone. It's already in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. Just read the Old Testament. It's already there. The test for a clone is just there. Very simple. No need for biology. No need for, particle physics not needed. Nothing. Just do whatever it's like in the Old Testament. Just listen to the words. If he cannot speak at all, then he's not a prophet. But if he can speak, listen to the words. If he says, let's cooperate with the government, let's work with them to solve things together, he is a clone. If he says they are Nazis, they should be annihilated, God hates them, he is not a clone. So simple. So simple. As they say, answers in the Bible. Yes, answers in the Bible. Read the Bible. That's how you know if he's a clone or not. Very, very simple. But of course, people don't really want to know. What they really want is to prolong the question because they don't want to actually deal with the real question, which is it okay to be Nazi? And what are the implications of being Nazi? Okay, so I'll stop with that, and there are other things to speak about, but I think my daughter should call me now any minute, so I'll continue later with additional subjects. Although, I kind of understand that people are kind of only starting to understand the issue of the containers. This is like a huge issue in this blog, and yes, I have many containers, not only the ones that I tested like yesterday was, or the day before. The 3 containers that I sampled were among the biggest and the most important one because it contained a ton of material and many news. But they have quite a bit of others and actually interesting ones. And if it's important for you, I can show you. Can you do like an updated, inventory of what I actually got, and maybe even take a microscopic examinations. Some are actually very. As I said, I do not have open containers right now. Besides the crucible that you've seen in the past, I actually had quite a bit open containers, or closed, but not sealed, and they actually were very interesting because they allowed oxygen supply, which allows the creation of huge life forms, which in turn allows the creation of huge neros, because the neros are usually in the ecosystem path, without electrolysis or without fire, heat energy that is supplied to them. Usually in the ecosystem path they grow in tandem with the life forms. They mutate the life forms to be huge, but they also become huge in the process because they feed on them. So and now I do not have besides I only have the crucible. The crucible is always it's like always used for burning. So like generally huge life forms cannot like exist like that. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, yes, I mean the biggest one was created in it, like the Full Metal Jacket, but I mean it's like it's not like created like in a way that the Neos can actually eat it. And I explained why in the past. It relates to ecosystem issues that I don't feel like repeating, but there are reason for that. Like why what exactly is the best way to feed the Neros in ecosystem path, and I don't I don't want to repeat myself now, but there are reasons for that, and I described this issue in the past. It's an interesting issue. In any case, because I do not use open containers, you can see very big life forms, and you can see very big Neros. Even though we've seen quite big ones in the like the metal aquarium, which is what I consider the most important. I mean, we haven't seen giants, but we've seen we didn't see like the Enterprise class starships, but we've seen like quite a bit like big starships, like and ton of it, and it was just in one drop from like that was taken randomly from the whole aquarium of, I don't know, 6, 7, I don't remember how many liters. So, but there are other containers that are that have all sorts of characteristics, like the salt water that is like based on seawater, which is very interesting, or what they call the alien aquarium, which is based on all sorts of like crude oils, and like more wax containers. So we have all sorts of so if it's really interesting to do it like an update to the inventory, I can do it, and maybe take some more microscopic samples. And if I so actually my mother just bought me some stuff now, like she did like a drop shipping, mostly food, basic food items, but also wire, actually, like barbed wire that I bought like in her apartment. So she brought it to me, and this will be helpful to actually conduct the miniature electrolysis chamber, something that I haven't done until now, never. Which means that to conduct electrolysis with the symbolical, you need to put not only the electrolysis setup should be correct, but also the symbolical setup in order to tell the Neros to multiply. So so it's quite a challenge if it's very tiny. But the idea is that it should be very tiny, but they should still the symbols should be like visible, and also with electricity running through them. And of course of course I'll use like the minimal kind of the lowest, like the weakest transformer, which is 1 ampere 1 volt. But the idea is to use very very small container, but it should be like high one. So because foam can be created, if the voltage is high relative to the quantity of the material, and if it's conductive, and it should be conductive, like quite conductive. So and we don't want to like this foam to be spilled. So there are also for consideration. But again, the objective is to be able to create Neros like we've done in the past many times, in the energetic pathway, not in the ecosystem pathway, but to create them in a way that maybe a single drop, like a microscopic drop, would statistically, it would be reasonable to assume that it will contain Neros that are like a family, which means that they, because in the both in the ecosystem pathway and in the energetic pathway, they are not created by magic. They're created by other Neros. So the ones that created them are the family, like you can say their parents. And so again, the thought, which is not been proven, but it's an hypothesis, is that maybe they are interlinked with their parents, because and again, they can be interlinked with any other Nero. Perhaps they are interlinked with a random Nero somewhere in the galaxy, or in the universe, or in another universe. I don't know. There are many options, but the simple option is to think that they are interlinked with their parents, or with another one that was created like adjacent to them in the same container, because they have the understanding of what is container. It should be said that they understand that they are inside the container. This is this is a basic tenet of like the neuroscience, that they know what is a container. A container is a basic element of the symbolic language, and I spoke about it in the channel. Right from the start, that the idea of container is a basic element of the symbolic language, and the neurons understand that they are inside the container, and that they are neurons outside the container, and that the container has properties, and the properties of the container is part of the symbolic language. It's very important. This is very important. Kind of part of I would say the syntax of the symbolic language, the how messages are constructed. So they know what is the container. So they can also be interlinked to one the same container. So if it will be tiny, it's reasonable to assume that we might in a single drop get two that are interlinked. And then there is a question of how do we know that they are interlinked? There are many questions involved. It's very, very, everything is very, hypothetical and ambitious, and many hardships could be come along the way. But again, if you are lucky and we have siyata dishmaya, and we have a lot of and persistency is also important. We might be able to actually isolate two neurons in the microscopic, of course, that under the microscope that are interlinked, and this would be amazing because we can then actually conduct experiments, and they also should be big, because small ones it's very difficult to actually watch the portal, the solar gate or the Stargate properties in the smaller ones, even though there should no be, probably there it's also probably something subjective. When I say small or big, it's related to my own eyes and to my microscopic equipment, of course. But from my perspective, I needed to be big in order to actually watch the Stargate properties. But so it's another thing. They need to be quite big. But if all of this goes well, presumably we will have in under the microscope two pretty big ones that demonstrate the Stargate property, and they can be and they are interlinked, and this will allow us to conduct a new amazing line of experiments that will directly test or pry into the portal, proper specifically the portal property of the neurons. Again, it's difficult. It probably will be very difficult to demonstrate energy transfer under the microscope, but we might be able to do it by blocking light from just one of them, and watch how light presumably is blocked in the other, because light is also energy, and so and maybe we can actually think about mass transfer. The problem is that it's in the microscopic scale. It's incredibly difficult to actually manipulate things at the microscopic scale. Almost impossible, because they are so small. So there are many practical questions involved. But at first we actually need to isolate two that are interlinked, and then there will be a whole set of the logistical question of how we actually conduct experiments on the two. But first we need to isolate such two. So hopefully I will get into it maybe today or maybe tomorrow.